The first thing I noticed was how tight my shoes felt. 5 years without wearing them and the leather had shrunk like the rest of my life. "Sir, do you have an invitation?" the doorman asked again, voice hesitant. His hand hovered near his earpiece. I didn't answer, because I was staring through the glass doors at her. She was standing beneath a crystal chandelier, talking to a group of people in cocktail dresses and navy blazers, holding a glass of white wine like she didn't use to drink. Her laugh echoed faintly into the street. She looked composed, perfectly styled. Not the kind of woman who once threw my clothes into the backyard because I forgot to buy oat milk. Not the kind of woman who told me calmly, plainly to vanish. My throat closed. The doorman stepped in front of me. "Sir?" I finally blinked. "I'm not here to cause a scene." That was a lie. I was here for the earthquake. I handed him the envelope. Thick, cream-colored. My name, my real name written in her handwriting. The same shaky loops she always made when she was lying. He read it. His eyes widened just enough for me to catch it. Then he stepped aside without a word. I walked into that ballroom like a ghost dressed in discount formal wear. The lights were too bright. The music too soft. The crowd too polished. And yet, the moment she saw me, her face didn't go pale, it went blank. Like her brain rebooted. Her glass slipped from her hand. It shattered. And then she collapsed. People screamed. And I just stood there watching my wife convulse on a $12,000 rug with a speech about resilience still halfway typed in her pocket. Not one person asked who I was. Not one person recognized me. But she did. Even as they carried her away. Even as the paramedics asked for her emergency contact and someone said she doesn't have family anymore. Even then she looked back at me. Like the past had come to collect its debt. And you know what the worst part is? I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But you don't tell someone to disappear unless you mean forever. And I tried. I really did. They rolled her out on a stretcher while people whispered and stared, pretending they weren't watching but watching anyway. It's funny how quickly humans go from laughing over shrimp cocktails to looking at someone like an exhibit in a tragedy museum. Her hand hung limp off the side, manicured nails still perfect, except for the one that had snapped clean off in the fall. I didn't follow the ambulance. I didn't even move until most of the guests had gone back to pretending the world hadn't cracked open in front of them. I just walked around the ballroom once, slow and quiet, like I was visiting the scene of a crime. Maybe I was. Maybe I still am. I took a folded piece of paper from my jacket and slipped it beneath a flower arrangement on her charity auction table. It wasn't dramatic. No all-caps screaming. No threats. Just one sentence. "You told me to disappear, so I did. This is what that looks like." Then I left. The next day, I got the first call. I didn't recognize the number, but the voice, it was trembling. Male. Older. Everett. No one calls me that anymore. Not since the day I left. I felt something jolt through my spine like a long-dead nerve firing up again. "Who is this?" "Dr. Kern. Marlowe's neurologist. She's stable now physically. But there's something you need to know." I didn't want to hear it. I was already halfway to hanging up. "She's been having episodes," he continued. "Fainting. Migraines. Dissociative spells. But the collapse last night, it wasn't random. She saw you. And according to her journal, actually, you're dead." I stopped breathing. "What?" I croaked. "What do you mean?" "I'm dead. She wrote in her journal, repeatedly, that you passed away in a hiking accident. She even held a memorial for you. We found photos. Speeches. A plaque. I couldn't process it. My feet felt like they weren't on the ground anymore. She built a narrative around your death," he added. "A very convincing one. And she believed it?" "She didn't just believe it, she needed to." I hung up. Not out of anger, but because I was seconds away from crumbling. 5 years ago, I left her kitchen carrying nothing but my wallet, my keys, and a broken sense of worth. I lived in obscurity, taking odd jobs, reading strangers' used paperbacks, renting under fake names. I didn't drink. I didn't date. I didn't speak of her. I was erased. But apparently, she rewrote me. She turned my silence into death. And the worst part? She grieved publicly. Facebook tributes. Candlelight vigil. Press releases. She played the part of the widowed, wounded wife. All while knowing I was alive. All while knowing the last words she said to me were, "Disappear." I needed answers, but I didn't know where to start. So I did what I always do when I'm lost, I walked. I wandered through the same streets we used to live on. Her favorite cafe was now a bookstore. The dry cleaner still had the sign she hated, "We press with love." The air smelled like memory. And then, outside her old apartment building, I saw someone I never expected. Her sister. Clara. She was standing by the curb with a paper bag of groceries and a phone wedged between her shoulder and cheek. I should have turned away. I should have kept walking. But I didn't. When she looked up and saw me, the bag dropped. Apples scattered everywhere. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Just this wide-eyed, open terror like she'd seen a ghost. "I'm not dead," I said softly. She took a step back. You can't be here. You don't understand. You don't know what she's done now." "What who's done?" I asked. She glanced around and pulled me toward the alley beside the building. "You're not safe here." I laughed. A bitter, breathless laugh. "Safe? From who?" "My wife." Clara shook her head. "You think this is about you? Everett, you don't know what she's turned into. She lied about your death because the truth wouldn't get her sympathy. Her voice broke. She's not the woman you remember. And if she knows you're alive." She didn't finish that sentence. And honestly, I didn't want her to. Because for the first time in 5 years, I was starting to realize. This wasn't just betrayal. It was something else. Something far more dangerous. I stood in that alley with Clara like I was a piece of bad history she thought was buried. Her hands shook as she picked up the groceries she dropped. A yogurt container burst open against the pavement, but she didn't even look at it. Just kept her eyes on me like I might vanish if she blinked too long. I couldn't stop replaying her words. "She's not the woman you remember." What did that even mean? I'd known Marlo since I was 22. I remembered the dorky girl who danced offbeat in the living room. The woman who once cried because we accidentally squashed a spider under a couch leg. And now I was hearing whispers of what? A mastermind? A sociopath? Clara handed me a scrap of paper torn from a prescription pad. An address. A storage unit just on the edge of town. She said, "I don't have proof. But you'll find it there. Just don't say my name. Don't tell her we spoke." "I mean it, Everett." I didn't ask how she got access. I didn't ask why she was suddenly giving me breadcrumbs after half a decade of silence. I just nodded and walked away like I was sleepwalking through a dream I hadn't consented to. The next day, I drove out to the storage facility. It was one of those faded places that had no cameras, no digital access, just rusted orange doors and a bored teenager reading manga in the office. I signed in under a fake name, paid $30 cash, and made my way to Unit 17B. The lock was already cut. Inside, the air smelled like mildew and old perfume. There were 4 boxes, 2 broken lamps, a garment rack, and something covered by a black sheet in the corner. I went to the boxes first. Letters. Dozens of them. All addressed to me. Not sent. Just written. And each envelope had the same date, March 12th. My birthday. I opened one. "Everett, I can't sleep. I keep seeing you by the sink with your stupid little tea towel over your shoulder like a dad in an old movie. I miss you and I hate that I miss you. I hate you for leaving. But I hate myself more for telling you to go." They went on. Page after page. Year after year. Guilt. Love. Regret. Madness. Each one more erratic than the last. Ink smeared. Some written in pencil with whole paragraphs crossed out and rewritten in different colors like she couldn't settle on which personality was speaking. And then I pulled off the sheet in the corner. It was a mannequin. Wearing my clothes. My jacket. My scarf. My old glasses. Down to the same stupid loafers she always teased me for wearing. And on its plastic hand, my wedding ring. I stumbled back, heart-thudding. My legs gave out and I hit the cold concrete floor. She didn't just tell people I was dead. She built a shrine to me. A version of me that couldn't argue. Couldn't leave. A replacement Everett she could control. Dress up. Speak to. I should have left right then. I should have gone back to Whitley Gap and burned the memory of this place into ash. But I didn't. Because sitting next to the mannequin in a weathered filing box was something worse. Newspaper clippings. Of other men. Obituaries. All eerily similar. Disappeared. Declared dead. Funeral arrangements made by grieving wives. Encircled in red ink across each clipping were their names, crossed out, and underneath, scrawled in pen, they weren't him. I felt sick. I felt cold in places no coat could reach. I took 3 photos, stuffed a few letters into my pocket, and slammed the unit shut. As I pulled out of the parking lot, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. A voice, male, maybe early 30s, spoke calmly. "You don't belong here, Everett. She told you to disappear. That offer's still good. But if you stay, if you try to finish this," silence, "then she won't be the only one who ends up in the ground." Click. I stared at the screen. No voicemail. No trace. Nothing but static in my brain and a growing dread in my chest. She told the world I died. Now I was starting to wonder if that was plan A, or a warning for what would happen if I ever came back. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the corner of a rundown motel room with cracked tile and flickering light, watching my reflection tremble in the dark TV screen. The phone was turned off. The photos I took from the storage unit? Gone. Deleted somehow. I hadn't done it. I checked my cloud account. Empty. Clean. Like it had never existed. Someone was inside my digital life, erasing my proof, managing my absence. I tried calling Clara the next morning. Straight to voicemail. Her line had been disconnected. Not out of service, deactivated. My last link to sanity had snapped, and now I was drifting alone in waters I barely understood. But I couldn't leave. I needed to see her again. Not because I wanted closure, but because I needed to know what she'd become. The woman who used to fall asleep to nature documentaries was now surrounded by threats, lies, and fake funerals. I couldn't comprehend how that happened. And if I didn't look her in the eye again, I'd always doubt whether any of it was real. So I did something reckless. I went to the hospital. I expected security, cameras, barriers, but oddly there weren't any. In fact, it was too easy. The nurse at the desk told me Marlo had been discharged hours earlier. A private escort came for her, she said. Eyes narrowed like she didn't buy the story herself. Said he was family. Had the right documents and everything. We don't usually release patients that quickly after a collapse like that. But... She trailed off, biting her lip. But what? I asked. The nurse leaned in. She paid a lot. In cash. Told us not to speak to anyone about her stay. I thanked her and left, though the moment I hit the parking lot, I felt it. That subtle pull at the edge of your gut that tells you you're being watched. I turned, but there was no one. Just a line of black SUVs in the distance. Engines quiet, windows too dark. I walked away. I circled the block twice. Walked through a diner. Used the back exit. Still felt the shadow. Back at my motel, I opened the mini fridge, pulled out a bottle of water and paused. Inside, taped beneath the top shelf, was an envelope. No address, no markings, just my name. Written in the same familiar slanted handwriting I hadn't seen since the day she told me to disappear. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. Old, blurry, but unmistakable. It was me. Sitting in the bakery attic I rented my first year in Whitley Gap. I had my beard, my scarf, my tea mug. Someone had been watching me. For years. And on the back of the photo were just 3 words. Written in red ink. We never lost you. My mouth went dry. I dropped the envelope and staggered back, nearly tripping over the coffee table. How could she have found me? I used aliases, paid in cash, switched towns twice, changed my name on every form that mattered. But that picture was real. That night, I sat against the door with a knife in my hand and every lamp in the room turned off. Waiting, listening. Shadows outside shifted like they knew I was looking. I couldn't breathe deeply. Every noise sounded like a lock clicking open. Every gust of wind became footsteps. By morning, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to hide anymore. If she wanted me to vanish, she should have stopped watching. I went to the last place I knew she wouldn't expect to see me. Her house. Not the old apartment. Not the city condo. The real one. The one I had only heard rumors about. The estate she'd supposedly bought after my death. Perched high on a hill outside of town behind electronic gates and stone pillars. I had memorized the address from one of the letters in the storage unit. It was the kind of place that whispered power even when silent. I climbed through the woods to avoid the front entrance, scratched up my arms on thorns and branches, and reached a back garden wall around dusk. I scaled it, fell on the other side, landed hard, scraped my palms. But when I stood up, there she was. Marlo, standing barefoot in the garden, arms crossed. No surprise in her eyes, no fear, just this look, like she had waited for this. You always hated lavender, she said softly. But I planted it anyway. She turned toward the house. Come in, Everett. I've set a place for you at the table. And just like that, the door opened on its own. She walked through, and I followed, even though I knew, deep in my bones, that once I stepped inside, I wasn't just visiting her house. I was stepping into a trap she'd been building for 5 years. And somehow, it felt like she was still 2 steps ahead. The air inside her house didn't feel like any air I'd breathed in years. It wasn't just clean, it was sterile, filtered, as if even oxygen had to ask permission to exist here. The kind of quiet that pressed against your chest instead of comforting you. She walked barefoot ahead of me, her white silk robe trailing slightly, barely touching the wooden floor, and never once did she look over her shoulder to make sure I was still following. She knew I would. That's what scared me the most, how sure she was. The dining room was already lit, soft gold chandeliers humming above a long mahogany table. 2 places were set. China, crystal, cloth napkins folded like origami birds. A single candlestick flickered between us. I noticed there was no food, no drinks, just the performance of dinner. The suggestion of it. She sat down slowly, folding her legs like a ballet dancer. Then she motioned for me to do the same. I remained standing. "What is this?" I asked. My voice cracked. I hated that. Marlo tilted her head as if I'd asked her to define the word door. "Dinner," she said simply. "There's nothing here." She smiled almost tenderly. "You always struggled with metaphor, Everett." I finally sat down, if only to make the tightness in my knees stop screaming. My fingers trembled against the table's edge, tracing the grains. It was the same design we had in our old apartment, but longer. Grandiose. Like she'd taken all the pieces of our old life and inflated them to match her new one. "You told people I was dead," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "You held a memorial." She didn't flinch. "I had to." "No, you didn't." "Yes, I did," she said softly. "Because dead men don't talk. They don't ask questions. They don't come back." I tried to stay calm. "You said you wanted space. That I was suffocating you. I left. I gave you that space. But you didn't move on. You rewrote the story. You made me into something I wasn't." "No," she said. "I made you into something you couldn't ruin." I froze. That sentence was too sharp to be spontaneous. She had rehearsed that. I pushed back from the table. "I want to know why." Her eyes stayed locked on mine. "Because letting you go wouldn't have hurt enough." And there it was. The truth, raw and unvarnished. She didn't just want me gone. She wanted me erased. So she could grieve the version of me she crafted in her mind. A version that would never fight back. Never contradict her. A dead man is the most obedient husband. She stood then and walked toward the fireplace. There was a frame above the mantel, an oil painting. It took me a moment to recognize it. It was me. But not how I was. How I used to be. Clean-shaven. Glasses. Soft posture. That same pale blue sweater I wore the last fall we spent together. "You kept painting me?" I whispered. "I painted you until you stayed still," she said without looking. Then she turned toward a cabinet and opened it. Inside were tapes. Dozens of them. Labeled by date. Some handwritten. Some printed with machine-perfect labels. "What are those?" She didn't answer. I walked toward them. Reached for one. She didn't stop me. The one I pulled said simply, "Everett, April 3rd, kitchen argument. Angle 2. I looked at her, shocked. "You recorded us?" She nodded. I needed to understand the patterns. Where things broke down. What I did wrong. What you did. I opened the tape case. There was a note inside. Typed. Precise. Line by line. Timestamp 014, he forgets her birthday reference. Timestamp 103, defensive posture begins. Timestamp 219, he apologizes too quickly, validation-seeking behavior. Timestamp 311, he flinches when she raises voice, emotional control effective. I dropped it like it was acid. She watched me, arms crossed, waiting. "I was your husband," I said. "Not some lab experiment." "No, Everett," she said, her voice still maddeningly calm. "You were my lesson." That's when I realized I hadn't walked into a trap. I had walked into her thesis. All these years, she wasn't mourning me. She was studying me. Building a narrative, editing the footage, removing variables until she had the perfect version of our story. One where I was gone, silent, and malleable. But I had returned. And I was the variable that refused to stay dead. I turned toward the front door. And stopped. Because someone was standing in the hallway. A man. Maybe early 40s. Dark jacket. Clean-shaven. Blank stare. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. He was there to make sure I didn't leave again. And just like that, I understood. I wasn't her husband. I was her unfinished project. He didn't speak. He didn't step aside. He didn't even breathe differently when our eyes met. Just stood there in the hallway like a wall disguised as a man, stoic, solid, perfectly placed. I took one step forward, hoping for a flicker of acknowledgement, some sign that he wasn't just a part of the furniture. Nothing. I glanced back at Marlo. She was pouring tea. You remember Dalton? She asked casually, like she was offering me a refill, not casually confirming the name of the man blocking the only exit. No, I said, and it came out hoarse. She stirred the tea. 1 sugar cube. Clink. He's been with me since Colorado. After I needed help sleeping. After you left. Dalton tilted his head as if examining how much of me was bluff and how much was bone. What is he? Your guard dog. No, she said. He's my archivist. He collects the things I don't want to forget. People included. I turned back to him. You work for her? His voice, when it finally came, was oddly polite. I ensure she isn't, interrupted. I could hear blood rushing in my ears. This wasn't just about grief or control anymore. This was theater. A whole world she'd constructed, where roles were assigned, scripts were written, and the audience, me, was never supposed to walk back on stage after intermission. I moved toward the hallway anyway. Dalton didn't stop me. Instead, he simply said, you should see the attic first. And with that, he stepped aside. I froze. Why the attic? She was going to show you eventually, he replied. It's better if you walk in knowing. The air shifted. The rules of gravity felt softer. My body moved before my brain approved. I climbed the stairs. Each creak under my foot felt intentional, like the house wanted me to hear what I was walking into. When I reached the top landing, I saw it, the attic door, half-cracked, warm light spilling through like a pulse. I pushed it open. And I swear my knees buckled. There were shelves. Endless shelves. Floor to ceiling. Boxes. Labeled meticulously. Everett 2013, missed calls. Everett 2014, voicemails. Everett 2015, words he regretted. Everett 2016, night tears. I moved through the room like I was underwater. My hands shook as I opened one of the boxes. Inside were dozens of cassettes. Cassette players. Transcripts. Journals. A full-blown museum of my emotional collapse, cataloged, dated, analyzed. My voice frozen in analog. My text messages printed and highlighted. My letters, some I didn't even remember writing, all preserved. She hadn't been grieving. She'd been curating. A woman obsessed with a ghost she created, me, but only the version of me that served her story. On the far wall, framed under glass, was something that made the breath leave my lungs completely. My old therapy notes. My actual notes. From a counselor I saw secretly in 2017 during one of the worst depressions of my life. I never even told Marlo I was going. They were confidential. Locked in that office. How did she have them? I staggered backward and caught sight of a familiar scent, cedar, and a hint of something floral. My wedding cologne. On a mannequin. Another mannequin. Like the one in the storage unit. But this one was newer. Dressed in the same outfit I was wearing the day I left. My real shoes. My watch. The scuffed belt I always meant to replace. And next to it. A second mannequin. Female. Its hair was styled like hers. Same robe. Same lipstick. Marlo had built us. Together. Frozen in the moment we never got to finish. Facing each other. And between them, a tiny crib. Empty. The label on the side read. Alternate ending family unit. I wanted to scream. To tear it all down. But I couldn't move. My legs had gone to jelly. My mouth was dust. I stood there, sweating and shivering at once, every hair on my arms raised in warning. Then I heard the music. Soft. Familiar. It took me a second to place it. Our wedding song. Playing from an old radio in the corner. I turned around and there she was. Marlo. In the doorway. Watching me. You're not here to confront me, she said. You're here to understand me. You've lost your mind, I whispered. No, she replied, stepping into the attic, voice calm. I found it. You just weren't there when it happened. I left because you told me to. No, she said, stopping inches from me. You left because you never really saw me. Now you do. Then she reached behind her and pulled out something I didn't expect. A file. Thick. She handed it to me. Inside were photos. Of me. From the past 5 years. Grocery stores. Coffee shops. Bus stops. Me walking alone, reading newspapers, sitting in diners. All dated. All filed. You've been following me? I had to finish the story. This isn't a story, Marlo. It is to me, she said. And in this version, you finally stay. I dropped the file. I'm not your project. She smiled, serene. You are if you don't leave. And behind her, Dalton reappeared. This time with another man. Identical suit. Same expression. I realized suddenly I might not be the first Everett she'd brought home. And I might not be the last. The man behind Dalton didn't blink when he stepped into the attic. His jawline was nearly identical to mine. Not exact, but close enough to make my stomach tighten. His hair was cut like mine used to be, parted slightly wrong. Same tired eyes. Same tired weight hanging off the corners of his mouth. He was wearing my old coat, or what looked like it. A replica, maybe? Same buttons. Same elbow patches. My mind began doing math in reverse, trying to reconcile how long someone had been wearing my skin without me noticing. I looked to Marlo. She was watching me again, not him. Him, she didn't need to monitor. He was already programmed. What is this? I asked, and I hated the tremor in my voice. Who is that? She didn't speak immediately. Instead, she stepped around the mannequins, past the crib labeled alternate ending, and gently brushed her fingers across the man's shoulder. He didn't flinch. Didn't react. Just stared forward like he was in a trance or rehearsing how not to be noticed. This is Nathan, she finally said. He came to fix the gutters 2 years ago. He reminded me of you. He even hummed the same way when he worked. Nathan. The name didn't matter. What she meant was clear. He was a placeholder. A human prop. But he's not you, she continued, and now her voice shifted, lower, softer, somewhere between affection and clinical detachment. He tried. He really did. But the nuances weren't there. He didn't over-apologize. He didn't choke up when I used your old phrases. He couldn't cry the right way. So I stopped asking him to try. I took a step back, suddenly aware of just how far I'd walked from the attic stairs. You're insane, I said, trying to steady my breath. You're unwell, Marlo. You've built a shrine of false starts and puppets. This isn't grief. This is control. You left me in chaos, she snapped, her composure finally cracking. You left me with silence. With unanswered questions. With all the broken pieces of someone I gave my entire life to and nothing to rebuild from. So I rebuilt. Her eyes burned. You think disappearing is quiet? You think it doesn't echo? My voice dropped. I did what you asked. No, she whispered. You did what I dared you to. That's not the same. She turned back to Nathan, then to Dalton. Take him downstairs. He's not ready yet. The 2 men moved toward me. Dalton, calm. Nathan, hollow. I bolted. I slammed through the attic door, jumped the stairs 2 at a time, hit the banister and nearly slipped, but I caught myself and burst into the hallway. The front door was still open, thank God, but I heard the rhythm of footsteps behind me, slow and practiced. They weren't chasing me. They were ushering me. Herding me like cattle down a chute. I made it outside. Into the cold. Onto the gravel. But when I reached my car, parked half a mile down the service road, the tires were flat. All 4. Slashed. No other vehicles in sight. I ran. Through the woods. Branches tore at my clothes, slashed my face. I didn't care. I ran until my lungs screamed and the world spun. I slept in a ditch that night, curled beneath an abandoned billboard with my coat wrapped around my head like armor. At sunrise, I walked 7 miles into town. Bloodied. Limping. Starving. I borrowed a stranger's phone under the pretense of calling a tow truck. Instead, I called the only person left I hadn't tried. Detective Lorna Hensley. I remembered her name from one of the old newspaper clippings in the storage unit. She'd written the first piece about my accident. One of the only people who'd questioned the memorial service's legitimacy back when nobody else cared enough to dig. She answered after 3 rings. This is Hensley. I told her my name. Silence. Then, where have you been? Buried, I said. You were right. About everything. I met her that afternoon at a diner 2 towns over. She didn't blink when she saw me. She just motioned for me to sit. I thought you were a myth, she said, sipping lukewarm coffee. Like a missing limb people swear they still feel. I was, I said. Then I showed her the photo of Nathan. The tapes. The labels. The shrines. The threats. And the letter I hadn't shown anyone yet, the one that arrived at my motel a week ago, written on hotel stationery from a place I'd never been. A letter that simply read, if you don't return to her, others will. It's your place, Everett. Come back before someone else fits better. Hensley stared at the letter for a long time. Then she folded it once and slid it into her coat pocket. You're not the first, she said. But maybe you'll be the last. I looked at her. What does that mean? She exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding something for years. It means this goes deeper than just obsession. This is about legacy. Marlo doesn't grieve. She edits. She rewrites until the story makes her the tragic hero. She's been collecting versions of you. All of them end the same way. Disappearance. Silence. Control. And now you're the only one who came back with a voice. And? She pushed her coffee away and stood. And that makes you dangerous to her. Which means you only have two choices left. I already knew what they were. Disappear again, I said. Or destroy the story she's written. Detective Hensley nodded. And then she handed me a key. To what? The last tape, she said. The one no one's ever seen. The one she locked away in a safety box 5 years ago under your name. My hands trembled as I held it. What's on it? I asked. She stared at me, grim. Proof. The key felt heavier than metal. It had weight in my palm, not just from what it unlocked, but from what it meant. It was proof that someone, somewhere, had recorded a version of my life I hadn't agreed to. And it was finally mine to see. Detective Hensley took me to a safe deposit box inside an old credit union. No cameras. No electronic logs. Just a name scratched on the inside of the vault door, E. Brooks. She slid the box onto the table and stepped back. You sure? She asked. I nodded and opened it. Inside was a single tape. Analog. Labeled in handwriting I recognized instantly. Everett, the final goodbye. There was also a note, folded neatly, clipped to the case. It read, in case he ever returns. Play this first. I didn't read further. I slid the tape into the old player in the corner, took a deep breath, and hit play. Her voice came through immediately. Marlo. But not the cold, calculating version I had just escaped. This was her softer voice. The one from our early mornings. Our blanket-wrapped movie nights. She sounded tired. Raw. Everett, if you're listening to this, you came back. Somehow. I don't know if it's guilt or curiosity or something darker, but you made it here. And that means I owe you the truth. My hands tightened on the edge of the table. You didn't ruin me. I want to say that first. I told everyone you were gone because it hurt less than saying I drove you away. I built a version of you because I couldn't live with the echo of what I did. You always listened. Even when I didn't deserve it. I never said thank you. She paused. I heard her inhale. Dalton doesn't know this, but the version of you I made, it was never for control. It was because I missed being seen by someone who saw the quiet parts. You saw me at my worst and still made tea. Still came home. I didn't know how to love that kind of loyalty until it was too late. Another pause. If you're listening, I hope it means you survived the mess I made. I hope it means you found something worth living for that didn't require being edited. Maybe even someone who never asked you to disappear. The tape clicked softly. Silence. No instructions. No threats. No final twist. Just a farewell. I looked at Hensley. That's it? She nodded. That's everything she left. And that's everything she needed you to hear. I took the tape and the letter. Not to keep them, but to return them. 2 days later, I went back to her house. Not to confront her, not to accuse, but to close the chapter she'd refused to finish. She answered the door before I even knocked. I know why you're here, she said. I handed her the box. You don't get to decide how I'm remembered, I said gently. That part's mine now. Her eyes welled. I saw something in her collapse, a resignation. Not defeat, but understanding. She didn't speak. She simply closed the door and didn't follow. That was the last time I saw her. I went back to Whitley Gap, not to hide this time, but to rebuild for real. I started teaching music lessons again, joined a local bookstore club, and for the first time in years, people knew me as Everett, not someone's ghost. I even adopted a dog. His name's Murphy. He snores when he dreams. And last week, during a community festival, someone asked me what I do. I told them I help people find their rhythm again. Because the truth is, you can lose yourself in someone else's story for so long that you forget how your own voice sounds. But if you listen closely, if you let yourself grieve, heal, breathe again, you'll hear it, quiet but steady. Your rhythm. Your heartbeat. Your story. And I'm living mine now. Not as the man who disappeared, but as the one who came back. And stayed.